Hey everyone, I'm Luke. I'm here to share a story that has turned my life upside down over the past few months. It's been a whirlwind of emotions, and I'm hoping that sharing my experience will not only help me process everything, but maybe help someone else going through a similar situation. My wife Veronica and I have been married for 8 years. We have a 6-year-old daughter, Emily, who is the light of my life. Veronica and I met in the most unexpected way, on a flight to New York. I was heading there for a business conference, and Veronica was traveling to visit her best friend. We were seated next to each other, and what started as casual small talk quickly turned into a deep conversation that lasted the entire flight. By the time we landed, I felt like I had known her forever. She had this magnetic personality that drew everyone in, and I was no exception. We exchanged numbers, and before long, we were inseparable. I fell head over heels for her and thought I was the luckiest guy in the world when she agreed to marry me. Our marriage was great, or so I thought. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but nothing major. Veronica was always the social butterfly, while I was more of the homebody. She had a close-knit group of friends, including her mother's friend, Nadine. Nadine was a few years older than Veronica, but they got along like best friends. Nadine had been around since Veronica was a child, and I always thought of her as a kind of second mother to Veronica. Things started to feel off a few months ago. Veronica began acting strangely, more secretive with her phone, staying out late for girls' nights, and generally being more distant. At first, I brushed it off as her just needing some space or dealing with stress from her job, but as the weeks went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. One night, Veronica came home particularly late from one of her supposed girls' nights. She smelled different, like a mix of alcohol and a faint, unfamiliar perfume. When I asked her about it, she snapped at me, saying she was tired and didn't want to talk. That was completely out of character for her. Veronica was usually very open and communicative, so this sudden change was alarming. My suspicions grew stronger. I started noticing little things, like how she would get defensive if I casually picked up her phone, or how she'd leave the room to take certain calls. I tried to tell myself that I was being paranoid, that Veronica would never do something so awful. But the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. Then came the day that changed everything. I had come home early from work, hoping to surprise Veronica and maybe spend some quality time together. When I walked in, the house was eerily quiet. I called out her name, but there was no answer. That's when I heard a muffled voice coming from upstairs. My heart started pounding in my chest as I made my way up the stairs. I'll never forget what I saw when I opened our bedroom door. There, on our bed, was Veronica with Nadine. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't even notice me at first. When they finally realized I was standing there, Veronica's face turned as white as a sheet. She scrambled to cover herself, while Nadine just stared at me with a mixture of shock and defiance. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. My mind was racing, trying to process what I was seeing. The betrayal cut deep. This wasn't just any affair. This was with someone who had been a family friend for decades, someone I trusted. Veronica tried to explain, but her words were a jumbled mess of lies and excuses. She said it was a one-time thing, that it didn't mean anything. But I could see the truth in her eyes. This wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't have been the last if I hadn't caught them. I walked out of the room feeling numb. My world had shattered in an instant, and I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let this betrayal go unanswered. That's how my journey began, and there's so much more to tell. After discovering Veronica in bed with Nadine, my world came crashing down. I knew I had to confront her, but I needed some time to process everything. I left the house that day and drove around aimlessly, trying to wrap my head around what I had just seen. I ended up at a park, sitting on a bench and staring into space. My mind was a whirlwind of anger, sadness, and confusion. How could she do this to me? To our family? I thought about Emily and how this would affect her. I felt a deep sense of betrayal, not just from Veronica but also from Nadine, someone I had trusted and considered family. After a few hours, I knew I had to go back and face Veronica. When I walked in, the house was quiet. Veronica was sitting on the couch, looking a mess. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying. She looked up at me and I could see the fear in her eyes. "Luke, please, let me explain," she started. I sat down across from her, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Explain? What is there to explain, Veronica? I saw everything. It was a mistake, she said, her voice trembling. I don't know what I was thinking. It just happened. Just happened? I repeated, incredulous. You don't just end up in bed with someone, especially not Nadine. Veronica wiped away a tear. It's complicated, Luke. I've been feeling so lost and confused lately. Nadine was there for me, and things just got out of hand. Lost and confused? I asked, my anger rising. So your solution is to have sex with someone else, with Nadine? Do you even realize how messed up that is? She looked down at her hands, unable to meet my gaze. I'm sorry, Luke. I know I've hurt you. I've hurt Emily. I never meant for any of this to happen. I shook my head, feeling a mix of anger and sorrow. Sorry isn't going to fix this, Veronica. You've broken my trust, and I don't know if we can ever come back from this. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of the situation hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Veronica spoke up again. I want to try and make things right, Luke. I want to work on our marriage, to rebuild what we've lost. I'll do anything. I looked at her, searching for any sign of sincerity. Anything? I asked. She nodded. Anything. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut off contact with Nadine. Whatever it takes. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that we could somehow salvage our marriage. But the image of her and Nadine together was burned into my mind. I knew that moving forward would be incredibly difficult, if not impossible. I need some time to think, I said finally. I can't just make a decision right now. Veronica nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, waiting. I left the house again, needing space to clear my head. I knew I had to figure out what I wanted, not just for myself, but for Emily as well. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about our family, our future. After confronting Veronica and hearing her apologies, I was still reeling from the betrayal. I knew deep down that our marriage was over. There was no coming back from what she had done, especially with someone as close to us as Nadine. But instead of telling Veronica outright that I wanted to break up, I decided to bide my time. I was angry and hurt, and I wanted her to feel some of the pain she'd inflicted on me. She had said she would do anything to make things right, so I was going to put that to the test. When I got back home that night, I put on my best act. I told Veronica that I was willing to try and mend our relationship, to give it one more shot. The relief on her face was palpable, and she clung to me, promising she would do whatever it took. Anything, Luke, she said, her voice filled with desperation. I'll do anything to make this right. All right, I said, my mind already working on a plan. But you need to prove it. I need to see that you're serious about making amends. She nodded eagerly. I will. Just tell me what to do. Over the next few days, I pretended to be working on our relationship. We went to therapy sessions, spent more time together, and even started planning a weekend getaway to try and reconnect. All the while, I was plotting my revenge. Finally, I came up with the perfect assignment. I wanted her to feel humiliated and regretful, to experience some of the pain and embarrassment I had gone through. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, I sat her down. Veronica, I said, keeping my tone serious, I've thought of something you can do to show me that you're truly committed to fixing our marriage. She looked at me, hopeful and eager. Anything, Luke. Just tell me. I want you to write a letter, I began, to all our friends and family. I want you to explain what you did, why you did it, and how it has affected our marriage. I want you to be brutally honest. No sugarcoating. Her eyes widened in shock. You want me to tell everyone? Yes, I said firmly. Everyone. I want them to know the truth. It's the least you can do after what you've done. She looked down, her face pale. Okay, I'll do it. I'll write the letter. No, you're not going to write it. You're going to type it, print it out, and hand-deliver it to everyone. And I want you to read it aloud to them when you give it to them. Her eyes filled with tears. Luke, please. Isn't that a bit too much? I shook my head. No, it's not. This is about accountability, Veronica. You need to own up to what you've done. If you can't do this, then there's no hope for us. She reluctantly agreed, and over the next week, she painstakingly wrote the letter. It was filled with apologies and explanations, detailing her affair with Nadine and how it had destroyed our trust. When she finished, she printed out multiple copies, and we began the painful process of delivering them. Watching her face, our friends and family, Reading aloud the letter of her infidelity was both heartbreaking and satisfying. I saw the shame and regret in her eyes, the way she struggled to get through each reading. It was exactly the kind of pain I wanted her to feel. By the end of the week, she was a wreck. But I wasn't done. I had one more part of my plan. "Veronica," I said, "there's one last person you need to deliver this to." "Who?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Nadine," I replied. "You need to read it to Nadine." Her face went white. "Luke, please, not her." "Yes, her. You need to face her and let her know how this affair has destroyed our marriage. If you truly want to make amends, you'll do this." With tears streaming down her face, she agreed. We drove to Nadine's house and I watched as Veronica shakily delivered the final letter. Nadine's face was a mix of shock and guilt as Veronica read aloud the painful words. When it was over, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. My revenge was complete. Veronica had experienced the humiliation and regret she deserved, and I had made my decision. It was time to end this charade and move on with my life. After Veronica delivered that last letter to Nadine, I felt a strange sense of closure. But I knew the hardest part was still ahead. It was time to confront Veronica with my true intentions and begin the process of moving forward. That evening, when we returned home from Nadine's, I sat Veronica down in the living room. She looked exhausted, both physically and emotionally. I could see the toll this had taken on her, but it didn't soften my resolve. This needed to be done. "Veronica," I began, taking a deep breath, "there's something I need to tell you." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with fear and anticipation. "What is it, Luke?" "I've made a decision," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What you've done, it's something I can't get past. I thought about it long and hard, and I realized that no matter how much effort we put into this, I'll never be able to trust you again." Her eyes widened, and a flicker of anger crossed her face. "You can't be serious. After everything I've done? After I humiliated myself in front of everyone we know because you asked me to?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I appreciate that you did what I asked, but it doesn't change what happened. You broke our trust and I can't live with that." Veronica's face twisted with rage. She stood up abruptly, knocking over a chair in the process. "You bastard! You made me go through all that, made me bare my soul to everyone, and now you're just going to walk away?" I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction seeing her so angry and helpless. "Yes, because it's the right thing to do, for both of us. This marriage is over, Veronica." She let out a scream of frustration and grabbed a plate from the table, hurling it against the wall. It shattered into pieces, the sound echoing through the house. "You think you can just leave me like this, after I did everything you asked?" I matched her anger, standing up and yelling back. "You did this to yourself, Veronica. You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences. I won't be your fool anymore." I took a step back, shocked by her outburst. "Veronica, calm down. This isn't helping." She grabbed another plate and smashed it, tears of anger streaming down her face. "Calm down? You want me to calm down? You've ruined my life, Luke. You've taken everything from me." I felt a pang of guilt, but knew I had to stay strong. "You think I haven't been living a nightmare? This is all on you, Veronica. You betrayed me, and now you're facing the consequences." She collapsed onto the floor, sobbing and clutching the remnants of a broken dish. "I hate you, Luke. I hate you so much." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "I'm sorry you feel that way, but this is the only way we can move forward. I'll pack some things and leave tonight. We can talk more tomorrow about the logistics." As I packed my bags, Veronica continued to cry and yell, her anger and despair filling the house. I knew there was no point in trying to reason with her right now. The damage was done, and there was no turning back. I left the house that night feeling a mix of sadness and relief. This chapter of my life was coming to an end, and while it was painful, it was also liberating. I had taken control of my own destiny and made the tough decision to move forward. The next few days were a blur of emotions. I stayed with my friend Jack, who was incredibly supportive. He listened as I poured out my heart, offering advice and a shoulder to lean on. Having someone to talk to made a world of difference. Veronica and I started the process of divorce, and while it was difficult, we managed to keep things civil. Our main focus was on Emily and making sure she was okay. We agreed to share custody and do our best to co-parent without letting our issues affect her. I also started seeing a therapist to help me navigate the emotional fallout. The sessions were tough, but they were also incredibly helpful. I began to understand my feelings of anger, betrayal, and sadness, and I started to work through them. One day, during a particularly intense session, my therapist asked me, "Luke, what do you want for your future? What do you want your life to look like moving forward?" The question caught me off guard. I hadn't really thought about the future beyond getting through each day. But as I sat there, I realized that I did have hopes and dreams. I wanted to find happiness again, to build a life for myself and Emily that was filled with love and stability. "I want to be happy," I said finally. "I want to move past this and find someone who loves and respects me. I want to be a good father to Emily and show her what a healthy relationship looks like." My therapist nodded. "That's a good start. It's important to have goals, something to strive for. You've been through a lot, but you're stronger than you think. You can get through this." Her words gave me hope. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of optimism about the future. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to rebuild my life and find happiness again. After leaving Veronica and staying with my friend Jack, I felt a mix of emotions. The sense of closure was there, but the anger and betrayal still lingered. I knew it was time to focus on rebuilding my life, but there was one more thing I needed to do before moving on completely. I couldn't shake the desire for revenge. I wanted to make sure Veronica felt the full weight of her actions. It wasn't enough for her to just experience the humiliation. She needed to face real consequences. With that in mind, I decided to take one last step to ensure she understood the gravity of her betrayal. I contacted our lawyer to begin the divorce proceedings and requested full custody of Emily. Veronica had already proven to be untrustworthy, and I wanted to ensure Emily was protected from any further turmoil. Our lawyer was supportive and agreed to help build a strong case for me. In the meantime, I continued to stay with Jack and focused on my therapy sessions. The therapist was a tremendous help, guiding me through the complex emotions and helping me to process everything. Each session brought a little more clarity and strength. One day, while sitting with Jack, I had an idea. Veronica's affair had been with Nadine, a trusted family friend. What if I exposed their affair to Nadine's family? They deserved to know the truth, and it would serve as a final blow to both Veronica and Nadine. It felt like the perfect revenge. I gathered all the evidence I'd collected over the past few weeks, the text messages, photos, and even the letter Veronica had read to everyone. Armed with this, I reached out to Nadine's husband, Richard, and asked to meet him in person. Richard and I met at a local cafe. He seemed puzzled and a bit concerned, but he agreed to hear me out. As I laid out all the evidence, I watched his expression change from confusion to shock, and finally to anger. He couldn't believe what he was seeing and hearing. "I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this," I said, trying to sound as sincere as possible. "But you deserve to know the truth. Nadine and Veronica betrayed us both." Richard was silent for a moment, processing the information. "Thank you, Luke. This is unbelievable. I need some time to think about what to do next." We parted ways, and I felt a sense of satisfaction. The truth was out, and now both Veronica and Nadine would have to face the consequences of their actions. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Veronica found out about my meeting with Richard, and she was livid. She called me screaming and accusing me of ruining her life. "You've gone too far, Luke," she yelled over the phone. "How could you do this to me?" "You did this to yourself, Veronica. You should have thought about the consequences before you decided to betray me." The divorce proceedings moved forward, and as expected, it was a messy and emotional process. Veronica fought hard, but the evidence was stacked against her. Eventually, I was awarded full custody of Emily, and the divorce was finalized. With the legal battles behind me, I focused on rebuilding my life. I moved into a new apartment, making it a cozy and safe space for Emily and me. My therapist helped me navigate the emotional aftermath, and I began to feel more like myself again. I also started reaching out to old friends and rebuilding my social life. It wasn't easy, but I knew I needed a strong support system to move forward. One of the most rewarding aspects was reconnecting with Emily. We spent more quality time together, and I made sure she knew she was loved and safe. Through therapy and self-reflection, I began to understand my own worth. I realized that I deserved happiness and a healthy relationship. It would take time, but I was determined to find someone who truly valued and respected me. After finalizing the divorce and gaining full custody of Emily, I felt a mixture of relief and determination. The hardest part seemed to be over, but the road to rebuilding my life was just beginning. One of my first steps was creating a new routine for Emily and myself. I wanted her to feel secure and loved despite the upheaval. We found a new apartment in a family-friendly neighborhood with a good school nearby. It took a few weeks to settle in, but soon enough, our new home started to feel like a safe haven. Emily was surprisingly resilient. Kids are tougher than we often give them credit for. She adapted well to the new environment, and I made sure to spend as much quality time with her as possible. We established traditions like Saturday morning pancakes and movie nights. It was important to me that she felt the stability and love that she deserved. Work was another area where I needed to find stability. The affair and subsequent divorce had taken a toll on my professional life. I'd taken some time off to deal with the personal crisis, but now I needed to refocus. My boss was understanding, and I gradually eased back into my role. It felt good to dive back into work, providing a sense of normalcy and purpose. Despite the progress, I still had moments of anger and sadness. The betrayal from Veronica and Nadine was a deep wound, and healing would take time. My therapy sessions continued to be a cornerstone of my recovery. Talking things out with my therapist helped me process my emotions and gain a better understanding of myself. One particular session stands out. My therapist, Dr. Thompson, asked me to focus on self-compassion. "Luke, you've been through a significant trauma. It's important to acknowledge your feelings and be kind to yourself during this process." I nodded, understanding the logic but finding it difficult to put into practice. "It's hard, Dr. Thompson. I keep replaying everything in my head, wondering what I could have done differently." She leaned forward, her expression gentle but firm. "There's no point in blaming yourself. People make their own choices. Veronica's actions were hers alone. Your responsibility now is to heal and build a better future for yourself and Emily." Those words resonated with me. Slowly, I began to let go of the self-blame and focus more on self-care. I started going to the gym regularly, something I had neglected during the chaos. Exercise became a healthy outlet for my stress and a way to clear my mind. I also reconnected with old hobbies, like playing the guitar and hiking. These activities reminded me of who I was before the betrayal and helped me rediscover my passions. As weeks turned into months, life began to stabilize. Emily was thriving in her new school, making friends and enjoying her classes. Seeing her happy gave me a sense of accomplishment and reinforced my commitment to being the best father I could be. One evening, as we were having dinner, Emily looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes and said, "Daddy, are you happy?" Her question caught me off guard. I paused for a moment, reflecting on how far we had come. "Yes, sweetie, I am happy, and I'm getting happier every day because of you." She smiled, seemingly satisfied with my answer, and continued eating. That simple exchange made me realize the importance of focusing on the positive aspects of my life. I had a beautiful daughter who loved me, a supportive friend in Jack, and a path forward. Eventually, I felt ready to start dating again. It wasn't about finding someone to replace Veronica. It was about opening myself up to new possibilities. I approached dating with caution, being honest with potential partners about my past, and taking things slow. It was a daunting process, but it also brought a sense of excitement and hope. Through all of this, I continued to work on myself. Dr. Thompson helped me navigate the complexities of dating post-divorce, and I learned to set healthy boundaries and communicate openly. Each step was a learning experience, contributing to my growth and resilience. One evening, after a particularly good date with someone I had met online, I sat down with my guitar and started playing a song I hadn't touched in years. The music flowed effortlessly, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. It was in that moment I realized I was truly on the path to healing. I matched with a woman named Rachel. She was kind, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. Our first date was at a cozy coffee shop. I was nervous, but Rachel's warm smile and easygoing nature quickly put me at ease. We talked about everything from our favorite movies to our childhoods. It felt natural, and I found myself laughing and enjoying her company. Over the next few weeks, Rachel and I continued to see each other. We took things slow, getting to know each other and building a connection. She knew about my past, and was incredibly understanding. It was refreshing to be with someone who accepted me for who I was, baggage and all. One weekend, I decided it was time for Rachel to meet Emily. It was a big step, and I wanted to make sure it was the right time. Rachel understood the importance of this and was excited yet respectful about meeting my daughter. We planned a casual outing to the park, hoping to make the introduction as comfortable as possible for Emily. When we arrived at the park, Emily was her usual energetic self, running around and playing. I introduced her to Rachel, and they hit it off immediately. Rachel was great with kids, and it showed. They played on the swings, fed the ducks, and even built a sandcastle together. Seeing them interact so well filled me with a sense of hope and happiness. As the day went on, I realized that blending a new relationship with fatherhood was going to be a delicate balance. I needed to make sure Emily always felt loved and secure, while also giving myself the space to explore this new chapter with Rachel. One evening, after putting Emily to bed, Rachel and I sat on the couch talking. She looked at me with those kind eyes and said, "Luke, I want you to know that I'm here for you. I know this isn't easy, but I'm willing to take it one step at a time with you." Her words meant the world to me. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could envision a future with someone who genuinely cared about me and Emily. It wasn't just about finding a new partner. It was about finding someone who could be a positive influence in both our lives. Despite the progress, there were still challenges. Dating as a single dad meant juggling responsibilities and finding time for both Emily and Rachel. There were moments of guilt when I had to leave Emily with a babysitter, or when I felt torn between my role as a father and my desire to build a relationship with Rachel. One night, during a particularly tough week at work, I felt overwhelmed. I was trying to manage everything and felt like I was failing. Rachel noticed and suggested we take a weekend trip to the mountains to relax and recharge. At first I hesitated, worried about leaving Emily, but Rachel assured me it would be good for both of us. We arranged for Emily to stay with Jack and his family for the weekend. They adored her, and she loved spending time with them. With Emily in good hands, Rachel and I set off for the mountains. The trip was exactly what I needed. The fresh air, scenic views, and time away from the daily grind helped me reset. During a quiet moment by the campfire, Rachel took my hand and said, "Luke, you're doing an amazing job. Don't be so hard on yourself. Emily is lucky to have you, and so am I." Her words resonated with me. I realized that it was okay to take time for myself, and that being a good father didn't mean sacrificing my own happiness. It was about finding balance and creating a life where both Emily and I could thrive. Returning from the trip, I felt more confident in my ability to navigate this new chapter. I continued to work on myself through therapy, setting healthy boundaries and communicating openly with both Rachel and Emily. Each day was a step forward in rebuilding my life. One evening, as Emily and I were having dinner, she looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes and said, "Daddy, I like Rachel. She makes you smile." Her words brought tears to my eyes. "I'm glad you like her, sweetie. She makes me happy, just like you do." As we settled into our new normal, I felt a sense of peace and optimism. It wasn't an easy journey, but I was determined to create a happy and healthy life for Emily and myself. Rachel became an integral part of that life, and together we continued to build a future filled with love and stability. After everything that happened with Veronica, I've come to realize that healing isn't a linear process. There were days when I felt on top of the world and days when the weight of betrayal felt unbearable. But through it all, I've grown stronger and more resilient. Emily has been my anchor through this storm. Watching her thrive and grow has given me a sense of purpose and joy that nothing else can match. She's adjusted well to our new life, and seeing her happy reassures me that I've made the right choices. Rachel has become an important part of our lives. Her kindness, patience, and love have helped me heal in ways I never thought possible. She's shown me that it's okay to trust again, and that love can be a beautiful healing force. Together, we've created a blended family that's full of love and support. Co-parenting with Veronica has had its challenges, but we've found a way to make it work for Emily's sake. We've both moved on and are focused on providing a stable environment for our daughter. It's not always easy, but I've learned to let go of the past and focus on what truly matters. One of the biggest lessons I've learned through this experience is the importance of self-care and self-compassion. It's easy to get lost in anger and resentment, But those emotions only hold you back. By taking care of myself and seeking therapy, I've been able to move forward and build a life that I'm proud of. Looking back, there were moments when I felt like I'd never get through this. But here I am, stronger and more determined than ever. If there's one piece of advice I can offer to anyone going through a similar situation, it's this. Don't be afraid to seek help. Lean on your support system. And remember that you deserve happiness and love. Life is unpredictable, and sometimes it throws us curveballs that we never saw coming. But those challenges also offer opportunities for growth and transformation. I've emerged from this experience with a deeper understanding of myself and a renewed sense of hope for the future. Emily and I are looking forward to the adventures ahead. Whether it's weekend trips, movie nights, or simply spending time together, I'm committed to creating a life filled with love, laughter, and stability for both of us. As for Rachel, I'm excited to see where our relationship will go. She's been a source of strength and joy, and I'm grateful for every moment we share. Together, we're building a future that's bright and full of possibilities. Remember, no matter how dark things might seem, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Keep moving forward, and don't be afraid to rebuild and start anew. You deserve happiness, and it's out there waiting for you. Take care, everyone. And thank you for being a part of my journey.